have been a lot of challenges that the organizations have faced in implementing these. Every new leader, new age leader that comes in, he or she are very distinctly aware about the need to put the diversity agenda, the inclusivity agenda forward and preach and practice this. But of course, challenges are there. So let's spend the next few minutes talking about these very specific challenges that organizations are facing. People are getting, let's say, disadvantaged because of the lack of diversity. But what are the challenges that organizations are facing in implementing or having their goal of DE and I achieved? So let's begin with you, Madhulika, first.
So first of all, I'm completely blown away with definitions or understanding of DEI, which both Parshuram and Saili have put forward today. Very, very interesting. Thanks, both of you. Uh, Hemant, in answer to your question, uh, there are a lot of challenges, right? This is not an easy journey for anyone. And probably the larger the organization, right, the more difficult a proper DEI plan or a long-term plan would be to implement. Okay, it's a clear assumption because the more the number of people that you have in your organization, your goals of DEI have to be very, very clearly defined by the top management, number one. And how do you implement these goals? And just because you've set those goals and you've tried to implement them, right, doesn't mean that they have actually reaped any strong benefits or they're improving, the results are improving over time. Okay. So it needs continuous thought process, it needs continuous review on a regular basis, it needs measurement. Okay. So all these aspects will become a challenge or already a challenge for a lot of organizations. So number one, the measurement, the setting of the goals, according to me, is a big challenge. So managements or boards need to be very, very clear as to how and what they want to achieve at the end of a certain period and continuously beyond that. Okay. The second part is you could implement certain goals of DEI. But if those goals are not really communicated properly to the rest of the organization, so there are a lot of different stakeholders in any organization. So it's not just the internal stakeholders. So you have obviously you have the employees who are the internal stakeholders, but there are also the external stakeholders, your customers, your suppliers as well, right? So how do you weave this culture or this story into your entire ecosystem on a continuous basis so that it really has the kind of impact you aspire for, not just restricted to within the organization? Okay, so there you have to also need to see a lot of acceptance from within the organization and outside of it as well. Okay, so how do you create this culture? How do you grow this culture beyond just just having a formal DI structure is what I'm aiming at. So to me, there are two challenges. How do you set these goals and how do you implement these goals across the organization? And how do you get your external and internal stakeholders to think about acceptance? Because that is the most difficult part. You could set a certain set of rules within the company, or you could try and set a culture of acceptance, but unless and until the acceptance percolates down to the last single person in the organization, the plan or the program might not even succeed. Okay, so I would say that these are the things one needs to think about. Okay, and why just organizations, right? I think there has to be a deeper thought at the level of schools even today, right? So the education system. So obviously a lot of people come into the corporate world and suddenly they are facing this issue of diversity or whatever challenges, at an individual level people could be facing, right? And if it starts from the beginning, from school level, from the start of society itself, right, I think these things over the next few decades will become far more easy. So these are the challenges any organization needs to be thinking about, and they need to be adaptable also. So managements and organizations need to think about how they are going to change their thought process, maintain a growth mindset to keep changing if something is not working in the favor of the organization. as well. So maybe some experimenting might also be required, right? How many people how many people really understand the concept of equity? I think a lot of us are also thinking about it. We need to think about it on a consistent basis. It's not a very easy concept to understand. So there's equality, which you mentioned, Heyman, and there is equity, right? So I remember I saw this cartoon somewhere, right? So there is a match going on. There's a match going on, and there are a couple of kids watching from the fence. So all the kids have different heights. So there is one kid who's very tall, one who's medium height, and the other one, poor guy, is very small, right? So he can't even see beyond the fence, right? So this is where the concept of a, a kind of a stool was brought in only for that child who had a short stature. Okay. But what is equity actually? Equity is when you bring in a winner's podium. So first, second, third, right? So for different heights. So the tallest person would go on the third one. Okay. And the shortest person was given the support of number one podium, right? So what I'm saying is even the tools that we implement today as an organization, what are the support that we are giving to bring people up so that they can perform the best possible of their ability? Everybody has some talent of their own. Everybody can bring something amazing to the table. But how is it that an organization will enable that? So just by keeping goals and trying to implement something is not enough. One has to really think beyond the normal to be able to bring such large organizations together in their DEI drive as well, is what I believe.
Fantastic,
So,
fantastic.
yeah.
Very relevant pointers. I would say you took the conversation from the corporate diversity, took it to the schools where the diversity education really needs to start. Today, organizations are struggling to educate their employees on the importance of diversity, inclusion, and then to implement it, and struggling with the acceptance coming from people, that the organization
Yeah.
is working hard to bring in diversity, but the people are not able to accept it with their whole heart. So there's a lot of education sensitization which is required at that level. Bringing it to the schools would really help. And absolutely, the great example of the three kids watching the match. Srinivas Bayer has actually found that cartoon and posted it on the chat. So members who are attending, you can actually have a quick look at the chat and you will see what exactly Madhulika was describing. Thank you, Srinivas. That was very quick thinking and a quicker action. Great. So let's now divert our attention to what Parshuram has to say about the challenges faced by the organization.
Right. So I think Madhulika has covered quite a bit of a ground, I would say. She has really pinpointed on, lot of things which organization needs to do internally, externally, how it can be, inculcated at the school level itself. She has really pointed out that, and this is all realistic, you know. But how many of us were thinking about DEI when we were in school? Not even school. Let's take a college. Let's take where we did a master's. Where were we really thinking of diversity? We had our, own. I mean, really, you made a great point. I mean, that is one of the challenge I'm really coming down to. When we actually, our childhood till whatever years we have been on this planet, that has given us some learning, some perspectives, and those are forged so strong on our minds that breaking those is really going to be a challenge. We talk about affirmations, we talk about positive energy and all that, but it happens only on a conscious level. When it goes to subconscious mind, it doesn't really percolate that well. So what I was trying to come at is, our stereotyping or prejudices, those are playing important role. When when organization talks about, let's say we have a chief diversity officer, but what next? It's about how we really, you know, uh, flow those thoughts, or reach out to even these uh, smallest individual in terms of work profile on our organizations is really going to be a challenge. Because think about the meetings, how many times we have our biases playing a role, right? Because we have our presumptions. We have, I mean, it could be halo effect, it can be Hall effect. There are a lot of biases being talked about. But when we come to a particular gathering where we have diverse workforce, or maybe even like party or even marriage events, you can think of those, and you know we have our perceptions, and those reflects in our actions, and those gets noticed by our surrounded peoples. But without your knowledge, without your notice. And what is that? That's the subconscious bias that we all are playing with. And that is the real challenge. One from, one moving from that unconscious bias, that level, apprehensions, perspectives, and what Hello Effect talks about is I'll always tend to agree to a person whom I like most, right? Horn effect is other way around. So those, auras will move with us, and how to break those auras and connect all those peoples around perspectives and make a bonded team towards a organization's goal and growth. That is going to be challenge. And also, one point I would like to add upon, equity part, which Madhulika you mentioned, how well we can do that. I mean, this even very picture from our participant here says that, what's the basic difference between equality and equity. So it says about giving equal opportunities to everybody, giving equal supports based on their needs is what equity. But when it comes to simple examples, let's take an example. Uh, a very talented female working on, she had got a promotions like, 2, 3, 4 promotions in 10 years, for example. It's a standard one, but still she had got that. And in woman's life, moment comes when she becomes mother, and that's a complete shift. Madhulika and maybe Saili would agree to that. And it comes to the point where how I can manage these two responsibilities. So whether organization is willing to support them by giving them work from home, or maybe extended sabbatical leave to take care of their children's, uh, and that's, this kind of examples are going to be really tricky in terms of managing talented workforce, managing retentions. I mean, everybody talks about attrition and retention and all that, isn't it? Very at the bottom of that, it comes to how that particular employee is feeling about coming to work, whether he or she is enjoying coming to work, whether he or she is being welcomed, included in all the decisions of meetings, important meetings. Everybody likes being on important things, right? So if we don't really go to bottom of that, I mean, it is going to be difficult. And that's what maybe we can, make a big corporate statement that we would like to have, DEI, 25 by 25 by, I mean, 25 by 25 is a Tata Steel who had announced in 2019. 25% of women diversity. I mean, it was initially started that way, but target was that by 2025, our workforce needs to be 25% diverse. Then they added LGBTQ and, some other disabled people diversity into it. And they are working on it. But imagine that company was a manufacturing and mining industry. And you can imagine those big plants or big mines, those are remote. Would we really be, would we really be thinking about women going to that mining site and working there? Scenario has changed now thanks to these peoples and organizations, who are taking conscious efforts to make that happen. And why? Because there are benefits to that. There are 87% chances that we could get the right, I mean, improved decision quality, right? But by not overcoming these challenges, I don't think it is going to be helpful. 19% of revenue can be improved compared to their peers who are not following diversity. So these are statistics which are generated over lot many years, so for like 2006 onwards, where these all norms came in and everybody's tracking how everybody is doing. But I think challenges are keeping up because it's not overnight journey and it's continuous process.
True. Fantastic.
That's
Thank, thank you, Parshuram. That was quite a wide perspective again. Madhulika gave a wide perspective. You've taken it wider. And now over to Sally for taking it even wider. Over to you.
Sure, absolutely interesting perspective, on the challenges that the organizations are facing today, with this. Now, just imagine, when we talk about diversity, inclusion, and equality, equity, so there is so much to do in this field itself, right? In this field, just imagine when it started. It started with few organizations, few and few diversities only were considered, I would say. And now we have like a range of diversities that uh, exist around us. We are one of them. And how much immense pressure is to the organizations to include these individuals, I would say, these individuals coming in from uh, different thought processes, different strata. I don't let's just put it across strata. So just imagine the pressure. So the challenges on the organizations are immense. I'm sure there's a lot of work happening, but just the first challenge that comes to my mind, and if I am an employer as an organization, trying to bring in diverse individuals on board, what is my challenge? First is, what can I offer to this individuals? What do I have with me that I can offer to these individuals, right? So I want to do more. I want to have more and more people with me, to do a lot of good work with the organization. But then what are my limitations? What are my offerings that I can provide to these individuals? It's just not a job. It's the various positions that can be offered, what responsibilities can be offered, where they can be offered, what what I can offer, and what are my limitations. There's a constant, I'm sure there's a constant challenge running in the minds of all the employers, what best they can do. And for this, they need to map their business needs. you know uh, the organization can never compromise on the business needs. Like, an employer has to survive. They need to ensure that business needs are mapped in or taken care of, first of all. And then a question comes in: map these business needs, understand what I can offer to the these individuals. So a thorough understanding of the entire operations, where I can fit in, how I can fit in, what I can offer, what I can do, what I cannot do. So these are the challenges running in terms of offerings from an employer perspective. And second, I would say a little was just touch upon, and very rightly, how infrastructure ready am I as an employer to ensure that I onboard these individuals, these everybody. I would say just an open environment. If I have to create as an employer, how infrastructure ready am I to it's not just the mobility I'm talking about. There are many aspects. We just touched upon the example of mining site. There are manufacturing units, there are construction sites, there are oil rigs. So you name it, there are various industries, there are various offerings, but then what I can offer, so this challenge, this kashmakash, in the minds of the employer will always exist. So the challenge is, how do I provide a better working infrastructure? If a person has to move around, has to travel, has to even the I would say not just the infrastructure of the organization. When I look as an employer, if I am located at any place, if it's oil rig, how do I facilitate as a society the movement across the city? So I feel the few challenges what an employer is definitely going through now is, even though there is a definitely a perspective that yes, I want them to have them on board, what are my offerings, how do I map them to ensure my business needs and demands are met, and then the infrastructure readiness, the safety comes in, the security there come in, there are medical challenges that might come in. How infrastructure ready, how much the investment would be at an organization level to ensure that I offer diversity, I ensure inclusiveness, I definitely want to give equal opportunities, I don't want anything to be missed out, nowhere I want a scope of inequality. But then I'm sure the constant challenges, how do I overcome these challenges? How can I be sufficient and wholesome enough to offer this to everybody? I mean, there are small scale industries, there are large scale industries, and each might have their own challenges with respect to these things. So I feel these are the challenges I'm sure the organizations are going through at this time.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a different take on the challenges, I would say. Very rightly pointed out that while organizations are making efforts and they are struggling with the mindset of the people, they're also struggling with infrastructure. Whether it is gender, I mean, when we started off with genders, we had situation where a lot of factories, construction sites, as rightly pointed by Sailesh, did not have washrooms for the women. I remember this famous movie about a black woman not having, this was about the space station NASA, and they did not have a washroom in their campus, and she had to walk 20 minutes or 30 minutes just to visit the washroom. The same is the situation in India until a few years ago or a decade ago. So we have come across with that, but when you extend the conversation of diversity to physically challenged people, a whole different level of infrastructure is required within the organization to, let's say, facilitate mobility of the people. But it's not just that. The person has to come to office. From his or her home to office is a very long transit, going through public transport, taking the roads, moving through steps, ramps, missing ramps on so many places. There's a lot more to be done to make the workplace, the schools, the whole country, the city and the country more inclusive and for people, right?